When you flip on the radio, what are you really tuning in for? Yeah, the music, the news, of course, but there's something else, right? It's that connection, that familiar, friendly voice that feels like they're in the car right there with you. For 100 years, that human touch, that's been the magic of radio. But that magic is starting to change in ways you might not even realize.
So let me ask you this. What if that voice wasn't real at all? What if that host you feel like you know, the one who gets you through your morning commute, was actually a machine? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but this question, it's not science fiction anymore. It's becoming very, very real.
And that's what brings us to this story. Over in Australia, one of the biggest players in radio, the Australian Radio Network, or ARN, they went and did something pretty wild. They secretly put an AI-generated host on the air, and for a while, nobody had a clue.
So this project, which they called Vi behind the scenes, was built to sound exactly like a human presenter. But here's the kicker. It was a total secret. The listeners had absolutely no idea they were hearing a synthetic voice. And the goal? Well, it was pretty clear. To see if an AI could run the show, 24/7, and, let's be honest, to figure out if they could cut back on staffing costs.
Okay, so an AI was on the radio. You might be thinking, what's the big deal? It's just some clever tech, right? Well, it's about way more than that. This one experiment touches on these huge ideas about trust, about what's real, and honestly, about the entire future of media. Once this came out, it immediately blew up into 4 major concerns. First up, transparency. Listeners felt lied to, and once that trust is gone, it's really hard to get back. Then there's authenticity. That personal connection we were just talking about, it's kind of hard to build that when you find out the person isn't a person at all. Of course, this sparked massive fears about jobs for real human DJs. And finally, you have to ask about content integrity. Can an AI really be trusted to have the judgment to handle a sensitive breaking news story? It's a huge question mark.
Now, while this all went down in Australia, don't think for a second that this is just an Australian story. Nope, this is really just a snapshot of a much bigger global shift. Media companies all over the world are wrestling with the exact same things.
You've got these massive forces pushing and pulling here. On one side, you have the huge wave of AI adoption everywhere, and, frankly, intense financial pressure on media companies that makes automation look really, really tempting. But on the other side, you've got us, the audience, and we're getting a lot more wary, a lot more skeptical of AI-generated content, especially when nobody tells us that's what we're getting.
And this quote from a couple of researchers just hits the nail on the head. This isn't just about radio. It is a fundamental conflict that's happening across every creative field you can think of. Music, art, you name it. It's the efficiency of the machine going head-to-head with our very human need for things to be authentic.
And that really is the heart of the conflict, isn't it? Automation, on one side, it offers some obvious wins. It cuts costs, it can work around the clock, and it makes staffing way more efficient. But then you have authenticity on the other side, and that's where you find everything that has always made media great. That human connection, the trust you build with your listeners, and that careful judgment that only a real person can bring.
So, when you boil it all down, the real problem here wasn't the AI itself. The tech is just a tool. The real issue, the thing that really broke that unspoken promise with the audience, was the secrecy. It was the choice to blur that line between a real person and a machine without telling anyone.
So, where does this all go from here? Well, you can kind of see 3 possible roads ahead. First, there's disclosure. Broadcasters might just be forced to label AI content. A little message that says, the voice you just heard was generated by AI. Another path is regulation, where unions and governments could step in with actual rules to protect jobs and make sure things stay transparent. But maybe the most likely future is integration. That's where AI doesn't replace the human host, but instead becomes their assistant, their co-pilot, handling the boring stuff and letting the human talent do what they do best, connect with you.
And all of this leaves us with one final massive question. A question that goes way beyond just a voice on the radio. As AI gets better and better at creating our music, our art, our movies, our entertainment, do we, the audience, have a fundamental right to know when we're experiencing something made by a person and when we're not? That's something we're all going to have to figure out together.